Hi everyone. I have an amazing opportunity. I get to share with you a glimpse of the future of Adobe Sensei. And I'm going to bridge together some clouds, Creative Cloud, Experience Cloud, and bring them all together. If you think about what we've been doing here, we've got this amazing symposium event, but we're going to be thinking for the story around a movie. We've seen some examples about the Dundee movie. Here's the starting point for my movie today. It's going to be an amazing science fiction movie, but all I've got is this sketch on paper that I'm starting with. So what I want to show you is the power of Sensei with a new prototype of what we call the Experience Assistant and how we can bring this to life very, very quickly. All right, let's transition. So, of course, I've got a piece of paper here, and I want to make sure that I can bring it into my digital world. So I'm starting on my phone. I have Adobe Scan, and I can go ahead and tap the camera, and we can take a photo with that and bring that open. And if you've seen Adobe Scan before, you might notice something new, and that's the blue dot in the bottom left-hand corner. So if I tap on that, what you're seeing here is Sensei's neuron starting to fire. It's looking at that sketch and trying to recognize what is the intent of the drawing. And so you can see here that there are, for instance, some tags. It can see that there's a woman. It can see space. It can see some planets. And it's a starting point for my creation. But of course, I've got a powerful desktop right next to me, so I want to make sure that I can transition. And all of my assets are in Adobe Experience Manager. So let's see how we can transfer across. Now to do that, because we're talking about innovation, one of the latest innovations around voice. And so let's see how that works in action. Send to Experience Manager. Great. All right, so if we transition over to my desktop here, and we just give that a second, we'll give it 3, 2, 1, -1. Oh, there we go. Live demos. We have our scan here that's come across, and I've gone from one cloud into Experience Cloud here, and I'm ready to go. That was pretty seamless. Let's have a look. I'm going to select this image and open up, and you can see the exact same experience panel, not just on the mobile device, but in a completely different product. That journey is continuing for me, and it's got the same recognition. Now, this is where the ideation starts. We've got our image. We want to start thinking about, all right, what are the actual assets that I'm going to use? Let's have a look and see what they look like. So let's get Sensei to help. Find images based on my sketch. All right, good. So what we're doing here is we're looking through the tens of thousands of creative assets that my photography team and Creative Studio have produced, but also the tens of millions of assets available on Adobe Stock, bringing them all together so I can start to action very quickly. And I want to start on the background. So let's go ahead and look here and double-click and start to see some of those assets. So why do I have stars? Well, remember, Sensei recognized the intent, and it's bringing that immediately to me. But we're Adobe. We understand images like no one else. And so we don't just say, here's a picture of stars. We understand the constellations, the nebula, and so on. And it allows me to filter down based on this criteria. So let's have a look. Now think about this. This is the background. So I want to make sure it's not too vibrant and stealing the attention. So I'm going to turn the vibrance down, maybe the density. And let's ultimately bring the size down. And it's starting to look good for a background. I like this one here. It's got the little kind of creative flair on the side. So let's bring that in. And immediately that asset comes into my folder with my creative assets. Good. We're on a good stretch so far. Now let me think about the foreground and my lead actress. So for those of you who have ever dealt with the painful task of going through the tens, hundreds, thousands of assets that come back from the studio, you know that sifting through all those assets is time-consuming. So what I want to show you here is how Sensei, again, helps us with that process. It knows at this point that I'm trying to make a selection. You've got the images lined up at the bottom. But if I narrow it down and say to Sensei, all right, we want to click down here, we want to focus on left and right, immediately you can see it's highlighting the face. And if I hold this button down, you can see it's bringing that foreground, that image right to the front. And I can scan back and forth. So now my decision is exactly where I want to be, on the eyes, looking left or right, and I can just scan through very quickly. So I don't know, I think I might rest on that. It's kind of a distant pose. A lot of creative people in the room going, no, I like the other one better, but that's fine. I'm going to double click on that one and again bring that into my project and I'm good to go. So I'm organized. I've got my assets. I want to be creative even further. What's the best tool to do that in? We might use Photoshop for this one. So let's try this. Open in Photoshop. So again, seamlessly connecting between the Experience Cloud and Creative Cloud. Here are my assets coming into Photoshop. And this is not just bringing up the images, it's composited them into a layered file. So I can move these around. I can even remove the background and see the sketch there. So I'm starting to think about how I want to use this. For the people who've used Photoshop in the room, this is where you start to think, all right, well, the next 4 hours, he's just going to be creating a mask and working out that fine hair and things like that. We better get settled in. Well, no. Sensei knows that and is already understanding the difference between the foreground and the background and saying to me, okay, we've created a mask for you. And if you look on the right-hand side, I can just go ahead, select that mask, and that's been applied. That's just saved me hours of time. All right, so I can start to move this around and resize it, etc. But let's just fast forward. And I've brought in a few extra assets. I'm looking at this thinking, this is looking pretty good. But you don't know the name of the movie yet. So let's start to think about putting the title in. And again, here I have my templates. Now, the key thing about this is Adobe's application of machine learning and artificial intelligence is not to replace creatives, but to speed up the workflow. So it knows my styles. It's brought up a few different templates that I've used in the past. It has an idea of roughly where I might want to put that text based on the blank canvas. So I can click here and start to type in, Symposium. No, it's not Symposium movie. It's called The Last Horizon. Let's get that right. I can click on that, and it applies that style for me immediately. So I'm feeling pretty good about this poster right now. Again, double click, and it completes that. My Photoshop file is completed. Now, in days gone by, we know this. We used to just create a poster and put it out there and we're done. But in the digital world, we know we need all these different variants for different aspect ratios and different formats. So I'm going to go back to Experience Manager to help me continue. Send image to Experience Manager. All right, good. And now we'll switch between the applications. And here comes my asset. And I've got my poster alongside my core assets. All right, so if we think about this now, I've got this poster. Now we can start to think about the layouting and understanding the different aspect ratios. And you can see I have a number of presets that I've already created. So I can, for instance, select, we'll grab the Instagram ad, the portrait, and maybe an email header. That's looking pretty good. And Sensei, create layouts. Good. So Sensei starts to bring them in. Again, just thinking about the different compositing methods, the different ways based on my previous work. And I can start to work on this by just selecting it. So let me go ahead and deselect this guy, select this asset. In fact, let's double click on it. And because it's an email header, it knows that we want to do something with that email. So it brings it automatically into Adobe Campaign to allow me to create that complete template. All right, so I'm looking good at this point, but I'm thinking, hang on. What about all that data that I've got to really think about the personalized experience? So this is where what I want to do is start to think about what are my different profiles, my different personas. And you can see I've got Carlene here. That's the default view that she will see. But if I start flicking through my different users, and I choose Zachary, for instance, we can actually see that Zachary will be served up a different instance. Why? Well, we've done a lot of analysis of previous work. We know what works. We know what resonates down to that audience type. We know through things like A/B testing, and we're bringing that back into the creative process. In fact, to show you what's happening behind the scenes here, you can see a view of all the different demographic data that we're bringing in. So in this fact, I've got woman, suit, face, spacesuit, and I've got the details here. But let me go even further. Let me show you Sensei's brain. Let's have a look at what Sensei's thinking about this. So if I double click, this is now my experience graph. This is taking me through all of the steps that I've done. Remember, I started with a sketch. I went to the phone. I went to the desktop. I took my assets. I went to Photoshop and back. And that complete creative journey is being mapped for me. And so it allows me to go and change things. And if I click here and choose the face, you'll notice I've got a little pop-up here. I can go through, and what's happening here is Sensei's replaying all of those steps. Now, for those of you who have ever had a creative director come up to you and go, look, I know you've got the final file, but can you just swap the act? Can we just do this one again? And it's like, you realize I've got to mask it and do all that. Yeah, you've got Photoshop. This is going to save so much time. And let me take a step further. Remember right at the beginning, we selected female because of the scan. I can go and change that and choose man. And it goes and replays all those steps with the lead male actor now. Right? So this is dramatically changing and speeding up your workflow. Now, the last thing is, remember, we've got data. I've got potential variations. I want to see how all this works. Of course, I can click through and make different variants. But along the top, you can see there's some suggestions that Sensei's made. So let's see that in action. Rather than me to manually go and create them all, let's just press the magic button here, and all of those variants are being created for me, all production ready, ready for use. This is bringing the art and the science together to really speed up our workflows and to bring amazing experiences to life. So this is the future that we want to bring to you. Look forward to showing you more in the future. Thanks, everyone.